The stakes in this race could not be higher.
As the next mayor of the city of Chicago.
Less than 2 weeks until the Chicago mayoral election, Paul Vallas.
We can provide for a future for all of Chicago's residents.
Brandon Johnson.
They said that this would never happen.
And an in-depth conversation with the candidates. With Fox 32 political editor Mike Flannery, Scott Schneider, and Anita Blanton. Live from Fox 32 Studios.
Good evening and welcome to our Fox 32 Mayoral Forum. I'm political editor Mike Flannery. Tonight, a roundtable discussion with candidates Paul Vallas and Brandon Johnson. I'm joined by my colleagues, Scott Schneider and Anita Blanton.
Yes, candidates, good evening. Tonight, we do want to have a conversation about the issues. And a little housekeeping here, we will not be ringing a bell. Just a deep dive into the philosophies of both candidates.
That's right. We, as the moderators, do reserve the right to wrap a candidate or offer his opponent a chance for rebuttal. You all can speak to each other. And we also reserve the right to move on to the next topic when it's time. Mike, I think we're ready to go.
Anita, thank you very much. Like many people in these parts, both of you have lived in the city and the suburbs. Mr. Vallas, growing up in Roseland on the far south side where your family was in the food and the restaurant business, you went to Chicago Public Schools. Then you moved to the suburbs for your junior and senior year at Orland Park's Carl Sandburg High. How dramatic was that move? How dramatic was the difference?
Well, it was pretty dramatic for me because, as you know, I grew up as a stutterer and stammerer. And so the combination of stuttering and stammering, the combination of moving to the suburbs where we had to meet new friends, you know, new social life, so to speak, or the absence of social life. You know, at the time I had, you know, serious acne concerns, fortunately not scarring, tall and lanky, all those issues hitting you at once.
How about the difference between Fenger High and Carl Sandburg High?
Well, Carl Sandburg was a lot smaller than Fenger. Fenger at that time had 2,200 students. So, I mean, Carl Sandburg, I think, had 600 students. So going from the south side in Roseland, as you know, my father opened a restaurant in the south suburbs, the first of our 3 restaurants. And then, of course, going to Carl Sandburg was like a sea change. But I'll tell you, Carl Sandburg in those days was not the Carl Sandburg that it is today with 4,000 students, because that area of the suburbs was just growing, just, you know, beginning to blossom.
Well, let's turn to Mr. Johnson. You were born in Elgin, where your dad worked at the Elgin Mental Health Center. How was your school experience different from what you saw in your first teaching job at the now largely gone Cabrini Green that you've talked about extensively?
Yeah, well, you know, it's a very, you know, dynamic presentation for those of us who were part of the second migration. And that represents my family. Stopped on the west side. My grandmother eventually settled on the south side of Chicago, 79th and Ashland. My father thought it was important for us to have an opportunity to have a public education without having to apply for it. But graduated from Elgin High School, spending a lot of time in the city of Chicago, visiting, of course, family. As you said, my father was not just a public employee, he was also a pastor. And so I was raised in the Church of God in Christ. And so we spent a lot of time on the west side, the south side of Chicago. And obviously there's a deep connection there with St. Paul, Church of God in Christ, Bishop Ford, which of course the famous expressway, highway, Ford Expressway. So our connections are quite symbiotic, quite frankly. And being a part of the school district U46, which was and still is the second largest school
largest in the state. Yeah.
Right. So there are a lot of similarities there. In fact, Elgin High School probably looked a lot like Lane Tech. Or even a place like Simeon.
Did you have an acne problem? Or?
Well, I mean, like most, you know, young people growing up, there were certainly dynamics and insecurities that we all had to work through. And of course, having a father who worked in a mental health center facility certainly shouldn't be a surprise why I'm such a big proponent of making sure that we have mental health services for all of Chicago.
How dramatic was the difference between Elgin High and then getting to Jenner at Cabrini Green?
Well, look, there were very similar issues there. I mean, obviously the concentration of poverty were far more severe, but I grew up in a working class family. It was 10 of us. I know what it's like to come home and your water's not on. The long orange extension cord from one window to another window to make sure the refrigerator's still on. And so these dynamics, of course, stretch beyond boundaries, right? Low income and poverty exists all over the state of Illinois. Obviously, in a place like Cabrini Green, it was that much more dramatic because the wealthiest neighborhood in the entire city of Chicago was within walking distance. But my students had bulldozers staring them down to prepare to destroy their public housing, which Cabrini Green is where my family, relatives were raised there. My aunt and uncle raised my cousins there. My aunt is a teacher's assistant. She's passed away. I have two cousins who are public school teachers. One became an administrator, but we still talk to her.
It's so nice to get to know you both on a personal level, but we do want to get to the issues. So, gentlemen, I recently had an opportunity to speak to a retired and former high-ranking Chicago police officer, and he told me that one of the reasons that right now morale is so low is that under Mayor Lightfoot, there was no distinction between making a mistake and misconduct. Frankly, they felt like she didn't have their backs. What will you, Brandon Johnson, do to regain their trust?
Look, I know what it's like to show up on the front line every single day as a public school teacher here in Chicago. I know what that's like, where there's a cross-section between all of the challenges that communities endure every single day. And so much like law enforcement, you show up on the front line and you run into trauma. And the problem that we have with the way policing is done, there's no plan. People don't know who their supervisor is on a regular basis. That's like me showing up as a public school teacher and the principal is different every other day. We have supervisors who supervise the supervisor. So one of the things that we have to do right away is to make sure that we have constitutional policing. And we have to invest in that to make sure that we have a ratio of sergeants and rank and file members that allows for the type of direction that law enforcement needs. Here's the other thing. It's why I'm a big proponent of treatment, not trauma. When you have 37%, 40% of the 911 calls that are coming through are mental health crises, we're asking police officers to do their job in someone else's. I know what that feels like. And so I'm going to invest to make sure that we have real supervision, but I'm also going to invest to make sure that we are freeing up law enforcement to be able to do their job and not be expected to do someone else's.
Paul Vallas, if there's a disconnect between CPD and the mayor's office, will a superintendent who hails from Chicago help to mend that fence?
Well, you know, let me talk to the broader question about why police are demoralized and why there's been an exodus of 1,000 police officers in the last 2 years. It's not only because they don't feel that the mayor has their back, but you know, when you're down 1,700 officers from 2019, when officers are working sometimes 14 and 16 days, and as you know, I've been obviously very involved with individual officers. There's been a record number of suicides, etc. When you have a command staff that's really promoted not based on time and grade and experience and merit, but rather than they're being promoted because of friends and family. And finally, when you have the type of policing where officers are constantly, because they're so short, being shifted from one area of the city to another, you're going to have that great exodus. So you've got to not only address the issue of leadership, promoting from within, and ultimately you have to go through a process of selecting a permanent superintendent, but you also have to return to the concept of beat integrity, where the police officers are being pushed down to the local beats. Even with the shortage, only 53% of the officers are in the districts, and you have got to return police to a normal schedule, because the pressure is not only on them, but the pressure is on their families. So at the end of the day, it's going to take a comprehensive approach, which I will take, and which I believe will not only significantly slow the exodus of officers, but also provide an opportunity for hundreds of officers to return, while at the same time increasing the interest in becoming a police officer.
When you talk about that comprehensive approach, obviously the community is a part of that. There's a new report by 21CP Solutions. It was just released today, and it outlines a threefold crisis facing law enforcement. The number of officers has dwindled. Crime has risen after years of decline. Public trust in police, it says, has eroded, and it recommends strong community involvement during the reform process. So, Mr. Vallas, we'll stay with you here. You've talked about filling the vacancies. You've talked about officers working established beats. Some would say it's not the amount of officers that is the problem so much as the strained relationship with the community. Right. What's your plan to address accountability for police and maintain that beat integrity?
Well, first of all, you know, my conversation has gone far beyond that. I've talked about enforcing the consent decree and the fact that the consent decree is the floor, not the ceiling. Also, let me point out that the 8-year contract that was negotiated had all the accountability provisions now they have to be enforced, but all the accountability provisions that the consent decree was demanding and that the police reform advocates were insisting upon. So that in itself is the first step. Accountability and enforcement is the second step. But I've also talked about the importance of working with these elected community-based councils, because this really gives you an opportunity to help forge the type of relationship between the police department and the public that is so critical. And you've got to restore community-based social services, reopening the mental health centers, in fact, opening more opioid and drug addiction centers, and allowing the local community, working with the police districts to decide which community groups constitute the most effective groups in dealing with issues like violence reduction. But make no mistake about it, without a return to beat integrity, where you have police officers on that beat responding in 3 minutes rather than 3 hours, police officers who know the community and who are known to the community by name and badge number, you're not going to be able to forge the type of working relationship that's critical to addressing the issue.
Well, Mr. Johnson, how do you get officers to live in the communities they serve, as you suggested? Are you going to incentivize that some type of way? What's your strategy there?
Yeah, I believe many of them want to actually live in the communities in which they serve. In fact, want to serve in the communities in which they live. The challenge we have is that we've created too many barriers for individuals who want to serve. You know, I think what's actually quite remarkable, particularly black and brown officers, who in many cases are raised in the very communities in which the community trust has been lost, along with the pervasive violence that exists. And they're still saying, sign me up for that. Those are remarkable human beings, but we have created barriers, right? And so psychological exams, black and brown applicants are overwhelmingly fail. We have individuals who want to serve in the police department, but because of their FICA score, they're prevented from serving. Individuals who may have a misdemeanor in their past, they're prevented from serving. Here's what we also have to recognize is that the type of relationships, the relationship that exists within black and brown communities has been strained because of a real historical reality of a breakdown. So when I think about the motivation behind 200 more detectives, I think about Kira Coles, who we haven't found her, right? That's why we need 200 more detectives. When we think about passing treatment, not trauma, Betty Jones on the west side of Chicago went to the aid and defense of someone who was having a mental health crisis and was murdered by law enforcement. When we talk about the consent decree, this is why we have to be prepared to invest in real constitutional policing for accountability. Laquan McDonald is dead. And that's why I'm grateful to have the support of over half of the district council members. I have the support of the Attorney General, Kwame Raoul, who is the top law enforcement officer for the state of Illinois, because these individuals have confidence in my leadership to actually be able to implement a public safety plan that's smart. Because to your point, right now we don't have a plan. I'm a teacher. I know how to do a lesson plan. In fact, we're so good at making lesson plans, we'll plan for the plan. And that's what we need in the city of Chicago to restore that trust.
Mr. Johnson, let me ask, where does the number 200 detectives come from? Attorney General Kwame Raoul on Flannery Fired Up this past weekend told me he's not sure if that's the number. Maybe we need more, maybe we need fewer. Until we've done he wants a comprehensive analysis done of the police department that he says would only take a few months. Where did the number 200 detectives come from?
Yeah, so 15% of the Los Angeles Police Department is made up of detectives. The city of Chicago, we're at 8%. We're looking at models across.
But to get up to 15, we'd need, what, almost 1,000 more, right?
No, I don't think that's the right math. What I'm saying is that the 200 detectives that we train and promote moves us closer to making sure that we have a well-prepared, equipped group of individuals that are prepared to start that process. Listen, it's why we talk about the $150 million within the police department that we invest in constitutional spending to train and promote. That's going to cost money. $50 million to implement the consent decree. Millions of dollars to make sure that the red flag laws that are on the books that we're not enforcing, that's going to require us to invest and spend. The point that I'm making, though, Mike, is whether it's 200 more, 300 more, we're way behind when it comes to the Los Angeles Police Department, who has less police officers per capita than we do, and Los Angeles is a safer city.
Mr. Vallas.
I really have to talk to the police strength issue. We are 1,700 officers down, and there are actually 1,100 vacancies right now. So as a result, it was reported a year ago that there were 400,000 high-priority 911 calls that were not responded to. I agree with Brandon. The police should not be the only responders, but those were high-priority 911 calls, including 32,000 assaults in progress, where there were not cars available. Also, they're only responding to about 10% of the domestic violence calls. And on the CTA, they're using private security to ensure security on the CTA. CTA ridership is down significantly because half the riders feel that the CTA is unsafe. So it's going to take many more than 200 detectives, because if you're not responding to calls in a timely manner, and if you're not aggressively holding people accountable, you're not going to be close.
Well, so you're setting the table here for a question I have, Mr. Vallas. Experts at the University of Chicago's crime lab say that only about 3,000 of the 11,000 plus sworn police officers that Chicago currently has are actually answering 911 calls. And it's a very liberal, loose definition. Only a dozen, if you've answered a dozen 911 calls in the last month, you're in that 3,000. I find that mind-boggling. So how do we get more of these officers out on the street, particularly getting deployed at the most violent times, overnight, on weekends, when we see this terrible bloodshed?
Exactly how I've articulated that. First of all, I've talked about closing the vacancies, and when people say, well, how are you going to finance the vacancies? They're spending $175 million in overtime. So at the end of the day,
it was over $200 million.
Yeah, it's probably over 200 now. About 7 times the amount that they paid when I had 13,500 officers on the street. Secondly, we're spending $100 million on private security on the CTA that could hire another 300 officers. So the bottom line is not a funding issue, but I've said over and over again, you can't simply deploy half the officers to the local districts. You've got to deploy 75 to 80% of those officers to the local districts. So it's simply not about filling the vacancies. It's simply not about replacing, privatized security with police officers. It's also about a strategy that returns to community-based policing, where there are cars covering all the police beats.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you seem to want to jump in there.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously those vacancies need to be filled, but we're having a challenge all over the country.
The vacancies of the 1,600.
Of the 1,600, but we're having challenges all over the country finding police officers to serve. Look, I believe it was Portland, Oregon, that went about the going forth on a plan that Paul Vallas is touting, of those who have retired or left will come back. And so Portland, Oregon said, we're gonna fill 80 vacancies with individuals who've retired or who have left. Do you know how many came back? 2. This notion, let me finish this thought real quick. This notion that we're going to fill those vacancies with retirees. Look, I'm a public school teacher. If we're asking the city of Chicago to count on retirees to come back to teaching, or retirees to come back to policing, that is a strategy that, quite frankly, has not worked anywhere in the country.
So we'll get to you in a minute, Mr. Vallas, but let me ask you, Mr. Johnson. So it's also, if you just Google hiring mental health professionals to respond to 911 calls, you see stories from all over the country, and you also come across the city of Chicago's postings for these jobs that they're having trouble filling. There's a shortage of these people all over the country, not just here, but in Boston, in Texas, in California, and you see news stories about it. You're going to have trouble, or Mr. Vallas will have trouble. You both say you're going to do this, hiring these folks.
So look, as I've said repeatedly, whether it's teachers, public employees, police officers, yes, there's a challenge. On the County Board of Commissioners, we hired an outside source to help our HR department hire people, because it is a challenge. But here's the unique thing about mental health support, is that there are individuals who are near completion, graduation, that could experience the type of training that teachers experience when we do our program right before we officially become licensed teachers, right? It's our student teaching. We can have a similar dynamic with mental health services, but also here's what we can do. There are individuals who have lived experiences in the city of Chicago who have experienced trauma, and these individuals are already in position, because of their experiences, to provide the type of restorative justice, the frontline support that's needed. We actually have a faster pathway to put EMT and mental health providers on the front line than it's going to take 2 years to get police officers.
Mr. Vallas?
Yeah, so let me respond. First of all, there are community-based organizations that are ready to provide mental health services and crisis intervention services right now. The city has a tendency to try to centralize things rather than to work with those organizations. A classic example is Sophia King's criticism of Lightfoot's budget, where they allocated hundreds of millions of dollars for these intervention services and maybe 5% of the money got to the community groups. So let me just say that. But look, when I was city budget director, we increased the ranks by 1,500 within, I think, a year and a half to 2 years. And incidentally, we were able to recruit hundreds of officers almost immediately. When my son applied for the Chicago Police Department 6-7 years ago, despite being a combat vet, he could not even get on the list to take the exam. Right. The bottom line here is, this is really important. The first step is to slow the exodus that sees us leave 1,000 officers leaving every single year, and you do that with new leadership.
Let me just ask one last question for the both of you. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Vallas, has Kim Foxx and her policies made Chicago safer?
I think what Kim Foxx has done is she is
the Cook County State's Attorney.
Yeah, I think what the State's Attorney Kim Foxx has done is that she has led with an incredible amount of integrity. She has been a part of the type of reform that's needed. I believe that she is now well over 100 black men in particular who have been released because they were incarcerated from torture and false confessions, right? And so if we want to restore, go back to your original point of confidence in policing, we can't prosecute men who are innocent, right? And this is a very brave approach by our state's attorney. Think about this system.
So she has made
think about this system, though, where men were brutalized and tortured by the police department.
It was
And
horrifying.
so that in and of itself is going to restore confidence in policing when we make sure that we're catching the right people who are doing the crime.
Mr. Vallas.
You know, if you look at CWB Chicago's data, they actually calculate every month the number of individuals who are arrested and those who are out on felony bail. And by their calculations, anywhere between 10 to 15% of the murders and the shootings being committed are being committed by people on a felony bail. And when you look at what they were, pretrial release program, felony bail, when you look at why they're on the street, these are individuals who have committed serious felonies. These are individuals who have repeatedly been arrested for, like, gun crimes. These are individuals who have had a number of felons.
Is that a no on Kim Foxx?
No, well, I believe that she has not been aggressive at keeping dangerous criminals off the street, and the data clearly states it.
Gentlemen, I want to move on to education. You both have very strong backgrounds. I want to talk in particular about safety. Recently, we've seen students at Benito Juarez, at Taft, and more recently at Elmwood Park High School stage walkouts. The protests have to do with their belief that there is inadequate safety on campus, and it comes at a time when CTU is talking about removing Chicago police officers from campus. Brandon Johnson, you are a teacher. How do you convince parents and students that removing trained police officers from school makes them more safe?
So this is not a situation where the Chicago Teachers Union is calling for that. Local school councils have the autonomy to make a decision on whether or not it was proper for the budget of the limited budget that the Chicago Public Schools offer local neighborhood schools, if this was the best use of their resources. I mean, look, here's the bottom line, is that the type of brutality that has taken place in the city of Chicago, as we talked about earlier, the mistrust that exists within our communities. We have to restore that trust. The amount of settlement that CPS has paid out because of police brutality and misconduct, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars there as well. And so the best way in which we can actually keep a local school community safe is by making sure that we have more adults in the building. You know, look, there are schools right now that have union security guards without police officers.
Right.
And those schools, you ask those parents and those families, like the school that my children attend, we feel safe. The best thing that we can do right now is to make sure that we are putting forth preventative measures to stop the type of pervasive violence that's taking place. This is about prevention. You have to invest to spend. You have to invest in constitutional policing to keep our community safer.
What do you think, Paul Vallas, is the solution? For example, at Elmwood Park, a student was reportedly on campus for several minutes with a ghost gun, an undetectable gun. He had even had metal detectors. They may not have found this weapon on this teenager's person. Who knows what could have happened if he hadn't been found with this gun?
Look, it is a fact that the Chicago Teachers Union leadership, including Brandon, have been advocates for defunding the police and have been advocates for getting the police officers out of the schools. Let me tell you, I was a teacher, too, at all levels. In fact, probably I spent more time as a teacher at all levels, including in the military, than the 4 years that you spent in Jenner in a school that I built in Cabrini Green. But I want to make the point here is that I have presided over districts that have seen extraordinary violence in the community. There are over 100 young people killed in the city of Chicago during the 6 years I was superintendent, and none of them were shot in a school, but they were killed in the communities. In fact, I not only went to those funerals and visited those families, I actually raised money to pay for 33 of them. But we had police officers in our high schools, and we had trained security in our elementary schools because police officers deter active shooters. There have been 240 school shootings in the last decade, 3 times the number of the previous decade. And I, to my horror, when I was superintendent of the Bridgeport schools in Connecticut, got a call one day when Sandy Hook, my neighboring school district, had that shooting. And I had a teacher who had a first grader who was killed in that classroom where 20 students and their faculty and the teacher was killed. I also have 2 superintendents who at one time or another worked under me who have had mass shootings at their schools. So at the end of the day, we've got to get police beat integrity means not only having police officers at the local beat, not only having police officers on the CTA platforms, but also having police officers outside the school in the morning and the evening to deter active shooters.
So
may I just respond? You know, because I actually find it, you know, absolutely ridiculous, but all too familiar, that someone like Paul Vallas speaks to other people and believes that they don't know what they're talking about. It's shameful, it's ridiculous, but we're familiar with that. You know, here's someone who's worked with the Republican Party to go after the retirement security of seniors, of those very teachers, left the city of Chicago with a $2.5 billion tax bill. He went to New York, he went to Philadelphia, left an $80 million deficit there. 2/3 of the district in New Orleans has been privatized. It's been described in New Orleans as the most inequitable school district in the entire country. His failures are so horrendous that there are 2 congressional leaders from around the country that have come to the city of Chicago to warn the city of Chicago, do not make the same mistake. Right. And then he wants to lecture me about numbers. But here's the truth. We all know someone like Paul who has failed over and over again and continues to be allowed to fail up. Because you make the loudest noise and you roll your eyes at everybody else, doesn't mean that you know what's best.
Well, let me talk about the students who are actually in the schools. Let me talk about this because obviously when we talk about the districts, at the heart of the districts are the children. So I want to talk about the school to prison pipeline. When you talk about kids in the community, you talk about the funerals that have happened, that you've attended and some that you've paid for, and the work that you've done in schools and in the community as well. This is a major concern, especially in marginalized communities. You've each given your take on SROs, of course, but Brandon, let me speak with you first. Over the summer, the Chicago Board of Education voted to keep a $33 million contract that pays for Chicago police resource officers in CPS high schools. How do you propose keeping students safe while turning around the lives of even those who are troubled?
Yeah, right now we have a school funding formula that I helped organize around the state to shift from a school-based budgeting to needs-based. And needs-based budgeting right now, if Chicago Public Schools were to implement that, we would have an additional $1 billion to provide the critical services that are needed. As mayor of the city of Chicago, I'm going to make sure that Chicago Public Schools actually implements state law because we're leaving money on the table. The best way to make sure that our school communities are strengthened and secure is by investing in them, and that's everything. We're talking about making sure that the trades are available in our schools, workforce development, right? We have to close the gap between graduation and job opportunities. This is why I'm calling for child care for all. It's why I'm calling for community colleges to be free, to invest in the future of children. Look, the best way to secure a community is through W-2s. My comprehensive education plan does that. But I will just say this last thing. I don't think it's right, because it's not, for Paul Vallas to dismiss my time as a teacher. You can't keep just dismissing people, Paul. It's irresponsible. And the fact of the matter is, you have failed everywhere you've gone, and you've been allowed to fail up. The stakes are too high.
Okay, we've made that point. Let's go on to Mr. Vallas. How do you see discipline for children that doesn't send them on a path toward a cell? That's really the question at hand.
Yeah, well, look, I really feel that I should respond. First of all, you know, at the end of the day, Brandon, me asking you to answer the questions or to provide facts is not dismissing you. You have a question that's answered, you need to provide the facts. The bottom line here is this. At the end of the day, if you're going, whether it was the Chicago Public Schools or the Philadelphia schools, when we left the school system with $1 billion in cash balances. Bill Clinton called our school reforms a model for the nation, and the pension system was 100% funded. When I left Philadelphia with a structurally balanced budget, I was voted by U.S. World News Report as one of 20 of America's best leaders. And in New Orleans, when I went to New Orleans, there were no schools.
And I understand those achievements, but I would like to hear about the children. Well, so what is your proposal to, how do you handle disciplining children, but also making sure they don't slip through the cracks and end up in the system?
Well, the way to do that is really prioritize pushing the money down to the local schools. Right now, we're spending $30,000 a child, and 60% of that money is finding its way into the local schools. So what I've talked about for the better part of 4 years, and what we did when I ran the schools, not only in Chicago, but also Philadelphia and New Orleans, is I say that we need to return to the concept of community schools, where the bulk of the money goes to the local schools and decisions are made on how to spend that money by the principals and their locally elected school councils. And what does that mean? That means opening the schools through the dinner hour, on weekends, on the summer, during the holidays, so that community-based organizations and park district organizations, as well as faith-based organizations and mentoring, tutoring, can bring their programs to the local schools. It means providing work studies so that young people can get it in paid internships. And it also means opening these abandoned schools or vacant schools or schools that are significantly underpopulated to the overage population who has left the schools and need to be provided an avenue to return and receive the occupational training that they need.
Gentlemen, I'm being told we have to move on. Mr. Johnson, you want to reinstate, or you have proposed reinstating Chicago's head tax that companies pay for each employee. When city officials repealed the head tax a decade or so ago, they indicated it was part of a deal with big employers like the Ford Motor Company, which has more than 4,000 people down on 126th Street. It got them to invest more than $1 billion and to hire a whole new third shift. What message would reinstating it send to Ford, which has just announced $11 billion in half a dozen other states in new investments, but not here?
We have a structural deficit that we have to deal with. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. We can't. And so we know how we got that structural deficit. A $1.2 billion taxes of fines and fees just from the Rahm Emanuel administration because of the structural deficit that was caused in the 90s. The $2.5 billion structural deficit, the structural deficit, and the $2.5 billion tax bill that we were left with because Paul Vallas took a holiday and pay in retirement. And so in order to actually fix our economy, we have to eliminate the structural deficit. We get to make up to $1 billion of new investments so that we can save lives, the programs that are needed to do that. And we do it without raising property taxes.
But losing those 4,000 jobs at 126th Street won't help.
What's not helping?
How would you attract and keep companies here, big employers?
We have to make sure that we're keeping everybody here. The greatest population loss right now, the city of Chicago, are black people. Why? Because we have not addressed public safety and property taxes. We just saw what is going on in Little Village and Pilsen because property taxes continue to decrease. increase, we're losing people, right? And so we have to deal with the structural deficit that Paul Vallas caused, make $1 billion of investments, and we have to do it without raising property taxes.
So
we can do that.
If I'm not mistaken, at the time that Mr. Vallas, well, go ahead. You say that you had the pensions were funded at 104%.
Mike, you certainly covered me during those times. You covered me when President Clinton came to town. You covered me when we got those 13 bond rating upgrades. So you did begin the process, though, of not paying the pensions. No, what happened was
they were overfunded.
What happened was the legislature consolidated the property tax levies when they gave the mayor control of the schools, so that he would have discretion into determining how their money would be spent. But what they did was they put a statutory obligation that said pensions had to remain 100% funded, so that if pension funding fell below 90%, you automatically had to make contributions into the system.
So after you were long gone.
Exactly. So what happened, but this is really important. In 2008, the state passes legislation to create a pension holiday. You remember this?
Yes, I do.
At all levels, state and local.
We have to move on. So your TV spot right now promises that you're going to hold the line on taxes. Does that mean no tax increases?
Well, that means I'm not going to propose right out of the box $800 million in tax increases. Income tax, head tax, jet fuel tax, at the end of the Board of Trade tax. Oh, of course, taxing the hotels and motels, which are already the highest tax in the state. So at the end of the day, or I'm sorry, in the nation. So basically what I've said is the mayor controls $28 billion in spending. $28 billion in spending. That's the power, that's the financial control that the mayor has. And you've got to look at that $28 billion in spending first. Also, the mayor also controls $1.1 billion in annual TIF diversions, and in just the last three years alone, there's been $1 billion in TIF surpluses that are at the discretion of the mayor. So what I'm saying is, what you need to do is you need to look at that $28 billion. You need to develop a long-term spending plan.
So there might
and you
be
need
tax
to look at the diversions. What I'm saying is, I'm going to work to avoid taxes, particularly the property tax.
You put some things on the table there.
I mean, it's pretty clear. No one knows what he's saying. I mean, that's why it sounds confusing, because it doesn't make any sense. In other words, he doesn't have a plan. In fact, when he put forth his plan 4 years ago, he said he was going to raise taxes, property taxes, by $250 million because he said the problem was bad. It's actually worse now. He now has 3 sentences on his website because he doesn't want to tell people the truth. The truth of the matter is that if we're going to get out of this structural deficit, we're going to have to actually take it seriously. And it's just, no one knows what he's saying. It doesn't make any sense because it doesn't make any sense.
Mike,
if he actually had a plan, he would put forth a plan. I'm the only person on this stage, first of all, who's ever been elected and won. I'm the only person who's actually put forth the budget plan. He's not putting forth the budget plan because he's going to raise your property taxes.
Michael, let me respond by saying I balanced all the city budgets, put the 13,500 cops on the street, upgraded the bond rating, did not punt, or the pensions at the city level were the healthiest that they've been in 30 years. And I froze property taxes for 3 years. And at the schools, I operated consistently under the property tax cap. The bottom line is Brandon has run nothing. He's never run nothing. I mean, he remains a paid employee from the Chicago Teachers Union. At the end of the day, what does he run? What has he managed? He's voted on budgets. He's never managed a budget. And his taxes, if you take the income tax out, the income tax that he's pushing out,
it was never there.
His taxes will generate less money than the annual tax increment financing surplus that is being generated every year and is at the disposal of the mayor to determine how that money should be spent. So that's a budget fact. That's just a budget fact.
I do want to talk about one of the more controversial revenue streams, and we learned a little more about that stream this week, and that is the speed cameras. Mayor Lightfoot, when she decided that the threshold was going to be 6 miles an hour over the posted limit, she sold it as a safety concern. She said there'd be fewer crashes in the city. Well, we learned this week that that simply wasn't the case. We also learned that Chicago made more than $84 million. So, Brandon Johnson, as mayor, would you consider, given the fact that a lot of these citations were written to those who live in minority communities, people of color got a lot of these tickets, would you consider returning that threshold to 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, or even perhaps getting rid of a lot of these speed cameras? As mayor, would you consider that?
Yes. You know, as I indicated earlier, $1.2 billion from property taxes, fines, and fees under the Emanuel administration. The $2.5 billion tax bill that the people of Chicago are responsible for because of the politics of old, in which Paul Vallas has been a contributor to that. Look, I'm prepared and willing to look at this contract I have to see the details, right? Because I'm not quite sure what the makeup of the contract is. But here's what I'm also considering. If we can't phase and remove this out, I'm prepared to make sure that whatever revenue is generated in a particular zip code, the revenue should stay in that zip code. But what we ultimately have to do is move away from these fines, taxes, and fees and make sure that the ultra-rich contribute and pay their fair share in taxes. That's what the people of Chicago have called for.
Will you meet that challenge?
Yes, absolutely. But let me point out that his tax plan isn't taxing the ultra-rich. His tax plan taxes businesses. In other words, you will be taxed based on the number of employees you have. His taxes are taxing the hotel-motel industry that has been devastated from COVID and is still recovering from COVID. He would tax the airlines, and of course he would have to get permission from the airlines. His income tax, even if his supporters got him to basically embrace the proposal that he originally made, would need state legislative approval. So at the end of the day, he's not taxing the rich. He's imposing taxes that are going to pummel the economy at a time when we could possibly be drifting into a recession.
Just 15 seconds just to clear it up. Paul, I never proposed an income tax. You know that. There was a publication, the Chicago Sun-Times, retracted it because they got it wrong. If we're going to have a debate, let's have an honest debate.
We are having
Tell the truth, not when you're making up stories, Paul.
Okay, well,
and so I just want to make sure we clear the air so that we can actually have a real, truthful conversation. I never proposed an income tax. So stop telling people that.
Okay, let's move on and let's talk about, we want to move on and we're going to talk about your endorsements. So each of you has had some pretty large endorsements in the last few weeks. You've had major endorsements just in the last few days. Mr. Johnson, Congressman Chuy Garcia is standing with you. And Paul, Congressman Bobby Rush just announced his support for you this week. But I am going to start with you, Mr. Vallas. On this part of the conversation, the FOP also is endorsing you. The leadership has made a number of statements that don't foster confidence in black and brown communities, quite frankly. Ironically, many black and brown officers have gone on record feeling the same way, unsupported. You've also been endorsed by billionaire Citadel founder Ken Griffin, who spent millions of dollars over the summer into trying to defeat Democrats during the midterms, and you say you're a lifelong Democrat. So how do you address those concerns, those affiliations, even with your new endorsements that have come in?
Well, so let me point out that, first of all, the FOP, the rank-and-file police officers determined who the FOP leadership endorses. If you remember, John Catanzara actually wanted to run for mayor. Coming from a family of both teachers and police officers, including my wife and my two sons, one is now a firefighter, at the end of the day, I accept the endorsement of the rank and file. But there's 23 unions that have endorsed me. The plumbers, the trades, you can go through the list of the unions that have endorsed me. Let me also point out that while I negotiated the collective bargaining agreement with the city and the FOP for free, they donated the money to charity, I've accepted no contributions from the FOP, in contrast to my opponent, who I think 80 to 90% of his funding is actually coming from the Chicago Teachers Union or their
And we'll
affiliates.
talk about Mr. Johnson in a moment, but what I'm asking you is about the endorsement and the affiliations and your message, I guess, to people who question those affiliations regarding your campaign.
Well, the business community that supported me have also supported Mayor Daley. Many of them have given money to Rahm Emanuel. Many of them have given money to Lori Lightfoot. In fact, during the course of the campaign, many of these individuals, and many of them are philanthropists and benefactors, were also approached by other candidates. So, you know, the business community gravitates towards someone who they can feel can get the city back on track, and clearly the city's in crisis. So, you know, I'm basically benefiting from the fact that I think there's broad support in the community for me, but it's just not limited to my contributions. I just wrote down, there are 1,800 new unique contributors contributing to my campaign. There's 80 similar contributors. So
that sets the table, Mr. Vallas, for a question to you, Mr. Johnson. So the Chicago Teachers Union, your employer, and then some of their affiliates at the state and the national level, and a few other public employee unions, have given you millions of dollars. Why shouldn't taxpayers be worried that the union that has employed you, and I guess is still paying your salary, although you're on leave, that as mayor, you're just not going to turn over the city treasury to these folks and give them whatever they want?
They don't have to be worried because I'm a part of the working class in the city of Chicago. I'm happy to be supported by AFSCME. That's my father's local. It's the first time AFSCME has endorsed a mayoral candidate since Harold Washington. I think that's actually pretty cool.
Well, the teachers union in the last contract, I think, came in. Their initial demands were something in the order of $2 billion, depending on who was counting. It included a lot of demands beyond the schools. That's a lot of money. As a taxpayer, that puts my heart in my throat.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't, right? Because it's worth investing in people. Well, let me just make sure I answer your first question, all right? Try to give me one at a time, all right? I'm happy to be supported by working people in the city of Chicago. That's a pretty cool thing. And that's AFSCME, that's SEIU, right? These are child care workers. They run child care centers. Some of them make $4 an hour, right? Crossing guards. I don't think you have to be afraid of crossing guards who are supporting my candidacy, right? We don't have to be. I'm going to be the mayor of the city of Chicago forever.
Maybe I have to be afraid of their union leaders. I'm not afraid of the crossing guards or the teachers, but maybe the union leaders.
But you don't have to be afraid of anyone, Mike, is what I'm saying. I'm going to be the mayor of the city of Chicago for everyone. Listen, we're not going to play to the fears of people. We're going to play to the hopes of people, right? The fact of the matter is that people want a better, stronger, safer Chicago. That's businesses, that's big businesses, small businesses, that's working people. I have a multicultural, multi-generational movement. You saw the polling. I was polling at 2.3% in October. But yet here I am, the son of a working class man, right, who raised 10 children in a house with one bathroom. What I'm simply saying is I'm going to be the mayor of the city of Chicago for everyone. I have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the residents of the city of Chicago. I've done it as a teacher, as an organizer, as a Cook County commissioner, where we have passed and managed multi-billion-dollar budgets. And we've done it by protecting the interests of the taxpayers. And I can't wait to do it when I'm the mayor of the city of Chicago.
All right, gentlemen, whichever of you is mayor, it's going to be an exciting summer. For the first time, NASCAR is going to be roaring through the streets of Chicago. But there's controversy here. We just learned today, a study came out, and we learned that when it comes to the economic impact, Lollapalooza is going to be a lot more lucrative than NASCAR. 3 times more, 10 days the impact versus, I believe, 24 days. We are talking about businesses that are going to be impacted. The Shed's talking about potentially losing millions of dollars, $50,000 for a cleanup. That may not even foot the bill. Brandon Johnson, was this a bad deal? And as mayor, would you potentially look at reopening this thing?
It's clear that the community was not a part of the process. Look, I've been a teacher, I'm an organizer, I'm a Cook County commissioner. The difference between me and other leaders, that I believe in collaboration, because I believe that's what the city of Chicago desires and needs. And so absolutely, I'm looking at everything to make sure that we are being responsive to the needs of people. And unfortunately, politics in the city of Chicago has become so desperate to raise revenue versus actually making the tough, smart decision. And that's why I put forth the budget plan, so that we're not using tricks and schemes to come up with all of these different dynamics to raise revenue. And so absolutely, we have to expose ourselves to these contracts to make sure that they actually meet the needs of people and that there's a community process that allows us to actually make that decision.
He's touched on something. Is the mayor's office monolithic, too monolithic? Should that have been something where there had been more stakeholders at the table, Paul Vallas?
Well, look, at the end of the day, you've got to give the city council the ability to evaluate and to assess the mayor's budget and programs, and they don't have the capacity to do that. Why don't they? Because there is really no ordinance that really defines what the budget process is. So the mayor can slap a ComEd deal on the desks, 10-year deal, take it or leave it. Here it is, analyze it, vote on it, and they don't have an opportunity to analyze it. The casino deal or the parking meter deal. So there's just a history of this. So you've got to give the council the capacity to, in effect, provide a check and balance. And what does that mean? That means really creating an independent budget office that can provide the city council with the analytical capabilities that they need, providing 100% transparency so the council can access information that they need to make informed judgments, and creating a process so that when there's a budget that's introduced, there's a process for analyzing that budget. When there's a bill or a law or an ordinance that's introduced, there's a process, there's hearings, there's public hearings, there's deliberations. So you really have to restore the balance, because we really exist in a city where the mayor is imperial.
So you all have had a long campaign season. I know, just take a breath, you know. We're almost there to another election day. We spoke with Max Bever from the election board on Good Day Chicago, and he says the first go-round, mail-in voting was great. The turnout on the day of was where the challenge was, and there could very well be a repeat performance. You have 13% of people still undecided. How do you plan to get people to the polls to vote for you, Mr. Johnson? We're
going to keep organizing. You know, we've built a multicultural, multi-generational movement. So having the support of Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, Congressman Chuy Garcia, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. We have independent political organizations. We literally have thousands of volunteers all over the city of Chicago, thousands of individual donors that have gravitated to our message of not just our hopes turning into votes, but our votes turning into real substantive policies that can transform the city. And the reason why our candidacy has caught fire is because we're speaking the language of the everyday experience in the city of Chicago. My wife and I will be celebrating 25 years of marriage in June. We're raising our 3 children on the west side of Chicago in Austin. And whether you live in Jefferson Park or McKinley Park or Morgan Park, Gage Park, Humboldt Park, no matter where you live in this city, you deserve to have a fully funded neighborhood school, health care, good paying jobs, affordable housing. Right. And that's the message that we've been provoking. And that's why my candidacy has caught fire. And I'm confident that that's going to turn out thousands of votes on behalf of Brandon Johnson.
And Mr. Vallas, how do you plan to get people to the polls to vote for you the day of?
Well, you remember how far I had to come to even get into the runoff. So at the end of the day, I've worked my way up like Brandon too, to have the opportunity to basically be in this runoff. But we've done it really by focusing on the issues. I consider public safety to be a human right. That means every community needs to have the police resources and the supports needed so that every community can be safe and secure. I think quality schools at the local level, community schools, is an equal right. And I believe that people want to live in a city that's affordable, and increasingly people are being driven from their homes. The businesses are being driven out of business because of the city's constant tax and fee and fine cycle. So I think our message is resonating, but I also have I have a presence in all of the wards, and the fact that 22 unions are endorsing me with their working men and women members, I think it's going to go a long way. And I've received the endorsements of people like Emil Jones and former Senate President Emil Jones and Bobby Rush. I believe almost a dozen black aldermen have endorsed me. Jesse White has endorsed me, as well as his alderman Barnett. So I believe that we're going to have the resources. Why isn't it
resonating for young voters? That seems to be an area that both of you all are missing at this point. Why isn't it resonating for young voters, the hope or the endorsements? Why isn't that?
Well, part of it is it's a matter of making sure that we are reaching those spaces. I just got a text message today from a community college professor where 30 of their students in the classroom went out and vote. Sat with a gentleman today that has access to 6,000 young voters. They're fired up and ready to vote for me.
And Mr. Vallas?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, besides the forums that we have done together, I've been campaigning. I'm not suggesting you haven't. I think we've both been campaigning for probably about 350, 360 consecutive days. And that means we've responded to every forum, not only the forums where we shared the stage, but our individual forums. And we're going to continue to do that. And so many of my forums have involved meeting with young professionals or meeting with university students or even high school students. So at the end of the day, we're trying to resonate both on the issues and at the same time resonate on a personal level.
I think we all agree you guys are the gold standard of agreeing to do forums.
No kidding.
Listen, gentlemen, both of you are either disputing or, as we've heard, sort of walking back things that you previously at least appeared to say or to embrace on social media. So, Mr. Vallas, you say social media posts that your critics call offensive dog whistles were not done by you. Could you explain?
No, they weren't posts. They were actually individuals or an individual.
Or likes.
Who was doing likes. And you know, campaigns need to have the right security. And you need to be vigilant. You know,
did you identify who this was?
You know, really, we didn't. We know that obviously a number of people had access to our social media. So we had to take the necessary precautions. Even when we shut down for a period of 48 hours, people were still trying to access. So you just have to be more responsible about managing your social media.
Mr. Johnson, we've been round around this mulberry bush, but tell me, why did you introduce that county board resolution calling for the police to divest funding to other programs not controlled by the police?
Because it's about prevention. You know, we had this conversation earlier.
So divest seems to mean defund to me. It's not similar.
I'm not going to defund the police, and everybody.
Why did you introduce that resolution?
Yeah, so I was getting at that. You know, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's Laquan McDonald, Betty Jones, Rakia Boyd, you know, there's real strain of these relationships because of the type of brutality that's gone unchecked, and it's cost taxpayers dollars, right? We have spent almost $1 billion in police misconduct. I'm not going to defund the police. I understand why that attack is against me, because it's a Republican talking point.
Well,
no Republicans, but let me just finish
introduce that resolution.
But as I just made it very clear, this is about making sure that we are righting the wrongs of the past, and that we have to make sure that we're moving towards prevention. Look, the same Republican Party that said that President Biden is going to defund the police, the same Republican Party that said that Governor J.B. Pritzker is going to defund the police, is the same Republican Party that is lying that I'm going to defund the police. It's a Republican talking point. It's a lie. Not going to do it.
All right, gentlemen, we're almost out of time. I would like to give you each a minute to answer this question. For the first time in 40 years, Chicagoans decided that a sitting mayor hadn't earned another term, and that's why you're both here. They're going to be demanding a lot of you, whichever one comes out on top. And I'm just curious, can you give them something? Paul Vallas, I want to start with you. Can you give them something tangible that you're going to accomplish within your first 100 days? Something specific.
60 seconds.
Yeah, well, in the first 100 days, I'm going to push the police down to the local beat levels. 53% of the officers should not be in the district. 75–80% of the officers should be in the district. Secondly, I'm going to open schools across the board through the dinner hours, on the weekends, during the holidays. You know, one of the questions at the earlier debates that we were involved in basically asked the question, what are you going to do for the hot summer that's coming up? Well, I'm not going to close the schools. I'm going to keep the schools open. So we have community-based activities in the schools to keep the young people engaged. And I'm going to take steps to address this issue of returning citizens. In so many communities, you have thousands, tens of thousands of individuals who have returned from incarceration, and they're blocked from housing. They're blocked from adult-ed occupational training opportunities, and they're blocked from jobs.
All right, 60 seconds. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, within the first 100 days, we're going to make sure that we double the amount of young people that we hire. This is about prevention when it comes to violence. And there's a direct correlation, a data point, that hiring young people in the city of Chicago, there's a direct correlation between youth employment and violence reduction. 2, we're going to pass treatment, not trauma, because we have to make sure that we're responding to the mental health crisis. 3, we're going to bring Chicago home. We're going to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to deal with the 65,000 plus families that are unhoused. But here's what we're also going to do. We're going to bring people together, right? I'm an organizer. Whether you're a small business owner, whether you're a large corporation, whether you're someone who has a fixed income on Social Security, there's a place for you in the city of Chicago. I think it's not a coincidence that on April 4th, we'll be voting, the day that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. We won't just celebrate his life and recognize his assassination. This is about a resurrection. And that's what I'm going to do as the mayor of the city of Chicago. I'm going to bring people together, and we're going to bring a better, stronger, safer Chicago.
Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, Paul Vallas, the former CEO of the Chicago Public Schools, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Schneider,
Thank you.
Anita Blanton, thank you very much. There you have it. 13 days to go. We're going to be counting the votes on April 4th. Thanks to these candidates, and thank you for watching. Have a good night.